Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to this joint webinar between LEDS LAC and LEDS Africa Partnership. My name is Ana Maria Mahano. I'm the Associate Director of the Latin American Center for Competitiveness and Sustainable Development at INCAE Business School in Costa Rica. And I'm the coordinator for the LEDS LAC platform secretariat. Both the LEDS Africa Partnership and the LEDS LAC secretariat are regional partnerships of the LEDS Global Partnership, a global network of organizations and individuals that work in the promotion of low emission, climate resilient development around the world. At LEDS LAC, we regularly organize webinars on topics that have been selected as priority by our membership. And some weeks ago, we developed this webinar on the experience of several Latin American countries that have worked with the MAPS program in participative processes of generating scientific evidence for decision making, and how the countries are building on those processes to develop their nationally designated contributions. So today we are building on that experience of that webinar to share with the Africa partnership the experience of the Latin American countries, so especially Chile. So I would like to thank the Secretariat of the Africa LEDS Partnership, also our very important partner in this webinar, the MAPS program. Today we have people we have people connected from many parts of the world. The speakers, we have Edward Abafo, who is the coordinator of the LEDS Africa Partnership. He is based in Ghana. And we have Michelle Dutoit, who is coordinator of the MAPS program. She's in South Africa. And we will have from Chile, Andres Pirasoli, the Mitigation and International Negotiations Officers of the Climate Change Office in the Ministry of Environment of Chile. I would like to give the floor to Edward to talk about the LEDS Africa Partnership and give a welcome to this event. Eddie?
Hi. A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, depending on your location. Thank you very much, Ana Maria, for a kind introduction. And as Ana Maria said, my name is Edward Awafu. I'm based in Ghana, and I coordinate the activities of the African LEDS Partnership at the Secretariat, which is being hosted by the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Kumasi. And I do this in conjunction with our colleague in Cote d'Ivoire, which is just next door. So I want to first of all thank the LEDS LAC Secretariat for agreeing to co-host this webinar with us. As the African Secretariat, we work towards collaborating with our sisters partnerships in the Latin American group and also in the Asian group to be able to conduct our activities. As you can understand, most of the things we do are virtual because of our locations across different parts of the continent in Africa and also across the world. So it's quite difficult logistically to meet face-to-face most of the time. So this is one of the means that we use to reach out to our members and also share our knowledge and then to conduct peer learning. And it's one of the things that we do as a secretariat, as a partnership. We share knowledge, and that feeds into the broad objective of the LEDS Global Partnership. So as Maria already said, the LEDS Global Partnership works through its regional platforms. So we have the African LEDS Partnership, which is the African regional platform for the LEDS Global Partnership, and then the other two partnerships in Asia and in Latin America. So for us at the African LEDS Partnership, what we want to do, and then what we set out to do actually, is to advance climate compatible development on the continent. And we do this by working with country governments, with international programs that are active in LEDS activities on the continent. And these programs help to alleviate poverty, to create jobs, and of course to manage the environment and natural resources on the continent. So this is a broader mission that we do as a partnership on the continent. And as I said, we work with country governments to be able to coordinate and advance climate compatible development, which feeds, of course, into their national development priorities. So we usually receive requests from country governments and from technical institutions if they want to conduct activities that are less related. Then we see here we can do that mostly through the provision of technical support and also providing them with knowledge that already exists. There are different countries, different institutions that conduct activities on LEDS. And once we get a repository of these things, we share with the other partnerships. So in doing this, so it's kind of like trying to summarize our objectives as a partnership. So, and once we have these things, what we do is that we work with members. We have our annual workshops that we meet face to face with all our members. And then besides that, we also have our frequent bulletins that we send out to members to update them on activities to partnerships. But when we meet face to face, we try to interact with members so we can identify what are the priority topics that is of most interest to them as countries, as institutions. So once we do that, then we have a elaborate consultation process and identify the priority topics for a particular year. So for this year in 2015, we have identified 3 broad thematic areas that we are working on. The first is energy, finance, and then also to develop LEDS planning and provide modeling support in LEDS. Now, in any sector, usually what you want to do is to conduct in-depth training that will have a high impact for members. So in the energy sector, we have limited ourselves based on consultations and feedback from the general membership. We are focusing on energy access and then also grid integration and mini hydros. So these are the topics that we are focusing on in the energy sector. And also on finance, we are looking at how to mobilize investment for LEDS implementation. Of course, if you want to implement LEDS activities, then we definitely need to have finance to be able to do these things. So we are already working on various areas with different stakeholders to identify, including the private sector, to identify ways of mobilizing funds to implement LEDS activities. And then also, once we do that, then we also want to support countries in their LEDS planning and implementation processes, and also conduct capacity building to support countries and institutions, build their capacity to be able to model LEDS. And we are doing this in cooperation with the European Commission. They are kindly providing funding support, logistics for us to conduct these activities. So we are still in the process of identifying countries to provide this support to. We've identified 3 countries already, but we need additional 35 countries to be able to provide this broader support. And then we are also in the final stage of completing the proposal for getting the funding support from the European Commission. And we anticipate that this will start by end of the year and then begin through to next year, 2016. So these are the focal focus that we are conducting this year, 2015, and we invite all of you to come on board. We've already circulated a work plan. I guess many of you have received the final work plan that we've agreed on. So if you look at the work plan, we will see exactly the thing that we set up to do. And as a secretariat, as I said, secretariat is being co-hosted by the University in Ghana and also the University in Cote d'Ivoire. And the Secretariat works with the support of a steering committee. You will see on the right hand of your screen the list of the steering committee members that provide guidance and support to the Secretariat in our activities. We have country governments represented there. We have think institutions. We have international programs working on the continent and even out of the continent. These are being represented by people at high level to support our activities. So all this said, you may want to learn a lot more about the partnership and what we do. So you can send me an email. My email address is there. You see on the left bottom of your screen. Email address is there, or you can visit the website at ledsgp.org/AfricaLEDS, and you can read a lot more about our activities. But we encourage you to join because usually when we send our bulletins, updates of our activities, and there's a toolkit that we have to share with members. We have a registered list of members, so it's difficult to reach you if you're not registered. So we encourage you to log on and reach at our website, ledsgp.org. You will see how to join. It's a simple two-step process which you spend less than 5 minutes to complete. And then once you do that, we have your contact, and then we can begin to share information with you. And then we can work together as a group. So with these few remarks, I would hand over to Shell to give us to. I know most of the countries, especially those of you representing governments, are now in the process of preparing your INDCs towards Paris and even beyond. So we want to learn from MAPS how they are doing that, how we can build on the MAPS experience for us as a region to be able to assist countries to develop a very robust, comprehensive INDCs, and that was submitted to the UNFCCC. And then, which will meet in Paris and beyond. These things will be discussed further. So thank you, and I wish all of us a very fruitful discussion. I'm sure that we have a lot of takeaways.
Thank you very much, Edward. I would like to welcome and thank all the participants. We already have heard from India, from Latin America. We know there are many people connected from Africa, and so it is really very a great satisfaction for us to be able to have this diverse audience, and we hope this webinar meets your expectations. I would like to say to those who have questions or comments during the presentations, please write them using the questions section in your dashboard, and I will read them to the presenters afterwards. We have a question and answer section. We will have first the two presentations, and then we will have a good space for questions, for comments from the audience. So I would like now to welcome Michelle Dutoit. As I said before, she is the coordinator of the MAPS program in the South-North organization in South Africa, and she will share with us, what is the MAPS approach and how they have been working with different countries in Latin America and other parts of the world with the application of that approach. So, Michelle, thank you for being here, for all the collaboration from MAPS. Please, we are ready to listen to your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anna Maria and Eddie, and it's really great that we have this opportunity to share some of our experiences from MAPS with you and the broader community. I'm going to be talking briefly and on quite a high level about the MAPS approach, and then leave it to Andres to go into a lot more detail with the specific example of MAPS Chile. So I'll be talking on our approach to LEDS planning. And just to start off, to give a bit of an explanation about what is MAPS, and essentially it's a developing country collaboration that works with, it's a government-led process in each country, and these country projects provide evidence, which is mitigation and development options, to government. And then government is able to use that information for decision making, for setting targets, and for policy making within their country. And just to reiterate that each country project is independent and is led by that country, and then it works in combination with key stakeholders within that country, together with local researchers and a facilitator, to together produce the knowledge or information that is required by government. And just to say that, to emphasize that it's very much a co-production of knowledge that happens within the country processes, where stakeholders feed in information to researchers and researchers feed back information to the stakeholders, and in that way the knowledge gets produced. I'm going to go just through some of the key focus areas of the approach. The first of which is that the MAPS approach is an approach and not a methodology. It very much is specific to each country and responsive to each country's particular priorities and particular circumstances. So this is not a prescriptive methodology or a one-size-fits-all recipe that gets imposed on countries, but rather that countries using, say, using a few key concepts together make an approach that's suitable to themselves, and for their priorities within the country. Also, that leads me on to the second and possibly the most important aspect of this approach, which is that it's a country-led process mandated by a multi-ministerial committee within the country, and that the sovereignty of the countries are respected in all aspects, and it's very important to the MAPS community that each of the countries has their own process separate from the collaboration. Then, which I've touched on before, that knowledge is co-produced both within the countries, and that happens through stakeholders, whether it's industry, leaders, or government, or civil society, together with the researchers develop this knowledge. And then also in the broader MAPS community, knowledge gets co-produced. Countries feed their learnings and experiences and challenges into the collaborative space, and in that way approaches and researches are changed through the collaboration. So it's definitely not a situation where there's a desktop study by a few researchers within a closed academic environment. The other key approach is that it's a facilitated process. So during country processes, multiple viewpoints are encouraged through a facilitator, and conflict isn't shied away from, and that's why there's a facilitator that leads the process. But very much the knowledge is produced by people from a broad spectrum of the national society. Another aspect is that it's a Southern-led community. The country use their own local researchers, and there's a development focus very much for the Southern community as opposed to developed countries, because priorities are, of course, very different. And then there's also a very strong collaboration and support element, and I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail in one of the slides that follow, which builds capacity within the countries themselves and also within the community. And this support is either direct support or it is more a collegial or collaborative support, but I'll get into that in a bit more detail later. And then the production of evidence is key, so that there's information that can inform targets and decisions within countries. And we found that in that way, the targets and the implementation becomes more achievable. And then another approach is that, another part of our approach is that we want to build a best practice and innovate. So continually challenge our assumptions or challenge our way of thinking and doing things so that we can evolve and find solutions appropriate to countries for the challenge that we're facing ourselves in. Then just a next slide, just showing what the MAPS community consists of. As I said before, it's a South-South collaboration, and our community of practice is currently the 4-country projects, so the country teams that are active in Latin America, and that is, yes, Brazil, MAPS Chile, and Andres is going to talk to us about MAPS Chile just now, the Low Carbon Development Strategy in Colombia, and then Plan CC. And then we've got a coordinating body called MAPS International, which sits in South Africa and also in Latin America, that coordinates the collaboration. And then also within our community, we have select experts from developing countries who also provide input when needed. As I said, I'm just going to touch on some of the collaborative activities that have happened during our Latin American program. And the collaboration depends very much on the nature of the challenges or the work that's being faced within the countries. We normally have about 4 thematic workshops a year where members of the country teams come together to discuss or interrogate a specific issue or theme. And sometimes we invite external experts to come and assist. And then we found, however, that when there are discrete issues or, say, specific technological, modeling challenges, that what has been very effective is to have a bilateral collaboration arrangement. For instance, we've had some researchers from one of the countries will go for a week or 2 weeks and work very closely with their counterparts in other countries. And this we found to be very effective as well. And then also there has been quite a lot of research that is being done on areas that are relevant to the countries. For instance, work on INDC and linking models, things like that. Specifically with regards to the INDC work, we've had a workshop last year, and there was a working paper that came out looking at the choice of form of INDCs that came out during the Lima COP. We've had a few joint presentations at the ADP meetings. And what we found is that the regional collaboration, the collaboration between these countries on the INDC has really helped in terms of institutional arrangements for the development and the adoption of the INDC. And a lot of the experiences have been shared, which has been useful. And it has also fostered debates about the kinds of contributions and competitiveness within the region. I won't keep you much longer before I hand over to Andres, but just to give you a bit of a background about the INDC process within MAPS, just to flag that when these national processes started, which was in between 2011 and 2012, the concept of the INDCs did not exist. That the national processes had an emphasis on domestic policy considerations, although they also included aspects that are relevant to the international negotiations. But what we have found now is that the work and both the results, the actual information that's come out of the processes, but also the tools and capacity that has been built during these national processes have been very useful to the informing of the INDCs in these countries. And some of the reasons that have come out is because the evidence, the information is robust and credible, and very importantly was developed by local researchers and local stakeholders. And that, yeah, so that's my second point. It was validated by a diverse set of stakeholders, and that evidence is integrated into the national context and it prioritizes development. And also just to say that we've heard from some of the country's teams that the work in leading such a process has definitely built their capacity and enabled them to approach this INDC process with confidence. Just a quick few points on Africa and maps and the INDC, that unfortunately the nature of maps type processes means that there wouldn't be able to be a maps process in time for this first INDC submission prior to the Paris COP. But how the maps approach could assist or support African countries in their INDC work is post-INDC submission, looking at the how versus at the what. So how would we implement this target, or what would the plan for implementing this look at? And then there's also, it opens up a possibility of revision. I also just want to stress again, and I'm sorry, I know I'm going on about this quite a lot, but the importance of using the domestic research and domestic models and domestic stakeholder input into this process. And then just to mention that we have started looking into potentially working with some African governments. We had a feasibility project, and there has been strong interest from certain countries, and we really believe that the development focus and the collaborative and supportive approach is very suitable and relevant to the African context. And we're going to be looking at this. We've got funding to investigate this approach in Africa over the coming year. So I think I'll leave it at that. And just to point you to our, sorry, there's a typing error. Just to point you to the MAPS website and our Twitter handle to look at some of the research we've been doing, which might be helpful. And also just to inform you that at the end of the year, there'll be a Coursera course on MAPS and the MAPS approach, which you'd be able to join. So I think that's it, and I'll be available for questions to elaborate on any of the points if anything was unclear. Thanks a lot. I'll hand over to you, Anna Maria.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you for the presentation, for sharing all that information with us. And we have room for a couple of questions before we start with the presentation of Chile. So I would like to read a question from Indrapal Parmar. The question, I will read the question. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Edward. I have been working in the field of climate change, GHG mitigation projects since last 7 years. Due to slowdown in carbon market, I am able to, or want to collaborate with MAPS innovative concept approach to deal with climate mitigation challenges at country level. This is a guide on how we can connect and work with you in Africa and Latin America. And they say, I believe our diverse work experience will be an asset to deal with local issues. So mainly, if someone wants, looking at what you have done, someone wants to find ways to collaborate with the MAPS program as Indrapal, what is the best way to find those spaces for collaboration?
I think the best way would be to contact us via email, and on our website there is there is our email address, and I can also send my Anna Maria, and perhaps you could forward on, I don't know if it's possible to do this over the webinar platform, my email address, and then we can take the discussion further. But on a more general level, the website would be the best point of call to make contact.
Okay, thank you. We will.
Twitter.
I will ask Alejandra to write your email address with your permission in the chat section of this webinar, so that people can contact you.
Yes.
There is a question, Michelle, regarding the MAPS approach from Hans. He says, how did you deal methodologically with issues of poor data quality and resistance among agencies to share knowledge with one another? And I will say that I agree with Hans that this is something that we find not enough data or not good quality of data, not being able to find or get all the information. How did you deal with that in the different countries?
I think I'm going to leave that question for, I think Andres will be able to answer it with a specific examples from Chile. I can only use from our experience that we had in South Africa during the long-term mitigation scenarios, that in terms, there were, in some of the technical working groups, there were actually members of the organization that, in the case of South Africa, it was our electricity utility who actually came into the technical working groups and worked together with the researchers, so data was shared in that manner. But to be honest, I won't, you can either email me the questions and I can get more information on that, more specific information on that, on how that was dealt with. I know that in the instance of Peru, they actually, prior to, they had to update their inventory and do almost a separate part of the project in order to get the information that they needed. So it is in some cases an issue. But I think Andres will be able to give more detailed answer than I am here. Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. We are we have had a little problem with Andres's connection, so while we're waiting, I would like to, of course, ask people if they have more questions. But I would like to know, Michelle, because you have the experience of all these countries you have been working with. Is there a possibility of a second phase? And if let's say there is no external funding for a second phase, is the MAPS program ready, let's say, to work with other countries, either with national funding or other, specific funding for a specific for a country?
Yes, most definitely there are plans, and MAPS would be very open and willing to work with other countries in both in Latin America and in Africa. And just to regarding the funding, that each of the countries, there was some seed funding by the overall MAPS program. In this case, it was by the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. But each of the countries did manage and find funds for their own projects. So, so all of those countries did receive their own funding. So, and that would be some. So, in answer to your question, would we be open to? Most definitely. And the best person to speak with in that direction is again via email, and I can put you in touch with the right person to discuss these matters with further.
Thank you, Michelle. We are ready for the second presentation. we have with us Andres Pirasoli. He works with the Ministry of Environment of Chile in the climate change direction, and he is in charge of mitigation and international negotiations. And Andres will share with us the experience of the MAPS process in Chile and how they are building on that process to develop their INDC's proposal. So Andres, thank you very much for collaborating with us. We have had you as a speaker in our events several times, so we feel that you're part of the team already. Thank you for being here with us and for sharing all your knowledge and experience with we have participants from all over the world. So thank you for being here, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Hello, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to this panel. Thank you for that introduction. I'll just go
Andres, I'm
right
sorry,
ahead.
you have to share your
Yeah.
Your
Yes. Yes, I understand.
Yes. Yeah, we can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, great. I want to apologize in advance because I am a bit under the weather. So I'll try to strive to speak clearly into the microphone. If you have questions or doubts, please, by all means, interrupt my presentation. It's very challenging to come in after Michelle. She has a very first-hand experience on the processes in your continent. I'm going to bring a perspective from Chile. We actually have learned a lot from our colleagues in South Africa, kind of the role models for this process based on science and public participation. I want to focus today on precisely that, the process, the know-how that we learned from the MAPS program in South Africa with the LTMS, and how we brought it down here almost 5 years ago to prepare what's on the first slide that you're looking at, which is basically our first draft INDC. Just to give a bit of context, this is our president, Madame Michelle Bachelet, and she's calling the rest of the 184 countries in the UN summit to take on this challenge, because it is a challenge that future generations will test us with. And she brings it down to the social level. So that's part of the analysis that we have been undertaking to prepare this first draft. Here's a bit of a temperature indicator, or more or less, because it's actually the percentage of the population that believe that climate change is actually caused by human activity. 86% of the people agree with this statement, and that climate change will affect their everyday life. 86% believe this, and also 78% believe that climate change is the main challenge that their generations face. So this is just to give you a taste of what the people in Chile, or how the people in Chile look at the problem of climate change. And this speaks very clearly and loud to the different regions in the country, where you can see a plethora of different types of impacts, north to south. The northern area is the area that maybe some of you know as the most arid desert in the planet, where it says Norte Grande Altiplano, that's the border with Peru and Bolivia, and it's the driest desert on Earth. So there you can see there are some impacts on fisheries. Of course, droughts are a big problem up there, but mainly in the central area is where the droughts are causing more trouble, because that's where the agriculture activity is the highest and with the biggest potential, also in the south. Now, Chile is not as experienced as maybe South Africa, but we have been implementing different types of tools since the signature of the Climate Change Convention. Namely, we started with the sale of CDM credits. We were the first country to sell them in the world. We also were the first country to register an AMA for recognition, and now we are in the process of implementing the first carbon tax. So this is to tell you that we have been trying different instruments and different tools, but the big issue and the big change, I think, is that now we're facing binding commitments under the convention, whereas up to this day, these commitments were non-binding or voluntary, subject, of course, to the provision of international resources. This on the mitigation perspective, but also on related to the vulnerability and the resilience of the country. We have had quite a lot of work on adaptation plans. We have a national adaptation plans and two sectorial adaptation plans, and we have 8 more on the works. So we try to remain active with the limited resources we have as a ministry, at least. We're the poorest of the poor in terms of budget and resource constraints. We also have been very active in the ILAC group, where we have strived to include the adaptation perspective not only in the 2015 agreement or the Paris Agreement, but also in the scope of the INDCs. Many of you have been our counterparts in the negotiations, and we have been able to discuss in detail what we mean by that. Of course, this is still a matter of negotiation, but it's really relieving to see that some of the INDCs include an adaptation perspective. Definitely the one that I'm talking to you about today does. As a main pillar of our contribution, we have an adaptation bit. Moving on to the next slide, just to show you also some of the more recent tools and instruments we have. The BUR was presented in the Lima COP with an updated greenhouse gas inventory. And these slides talked about the green taxes that we have, specifically the carbon tax for fossil fuel sources. And here you can see that we're taxing coal, we're taxing diesel, other matter like certain petcoke, natural gas, and it is estimated that we could, by the year 2017, start making around $230 million a year. Now, MAPS, as I was telling you, is at the core of the work we have been doing. Of course, we wouldn't have been able to do most of the things that I told you before without robust and legitimate and pertinent information. And this is how, at least in the case of Chile, we started the MAPS process back in 2010. The conversations around the process and the project started then with the visit of Stefan Raubenheimer and Hardinkler meeting with us for the first time. and then by 2012 we started actually commissioning the studies, and we have had a great showdown. 300 participants from NGOs, academy, the public and private sector. We have hired more than 100 consultants to build the different scenarios, and very importantly, we have worked with different levels of expertise. We have what we call a visions group, a group of the construction of scenarios, scenario building team or vision team now in the phase 3 of the project. In fact, we have tonight for you, or this afternoon for us, we have a workshop where we're going to analyze, out of the 96 mitigation measures that were analyzed in detail by the project, we have 10 mitigation measures that will be analyzed by this vision group, the scenario building team, to assess the implementability of these tools, the costs, the co-benefits associated, and so on and so forth, with the perspective to implement those. Now, it was very important because we needed to be able to provide information to decision makers in terms of how we were going to reach the 20% reduction by 2020. That was our target against PAU. That's the current voluntary target that Chile has as a result of the negotiations under the LCA. But today, this project has become even more relevant. As you know, we are negotiating the Durban platform for enhanced action, and then we have to understand the different sectors and the way they behave in terms of emissions, so that we can come up with a contribution that is ambitious but fair and equitable according to our national capacities and, of course, the extent of our responsibilities in the problem. So, like I said, we were meaning to understand the different sectors. This is an image that shows what those sectors are: electricity generation, transportation, waste management, land use and land change, agriculture and cattle, of course the industrial and mining sectors, and last but not least, the consumption of energy in the residential, public and commercial buildings of our country. With these sectors in mind, we were able to start a conversation, I would say, and have a very safe environment for us to be able to think of the different scenarios ahead. And ultimately, as a result, first of the phase 1 of the project, we were able to identify this business as usual line drawn from 2007 to 2020, and then to understand what mitigation scenarios would help us comply with the 20% deviation below that baseline that our political voluntary target up to 2020 implied. Now, we had different scenarios and ordered in terms of the level of effort that those scenarios implied. And just very briefly, I wanted to tell you, because here the importance of the rhetoric is quite paramount. We want to tell a story, and we want to make sure that the story is told in a way that we can trigger conductual change. And this is why we thought that picturing it as such, that you can see it on this slide, and also talking to the effort, is also a good way to get the ball rolling, specifically in certain sectors that are maybe more or less lenient to action. Also, a very interesting tool that we came up with as a result of this process is a visualization tool. It's a tool that all the citizens can have access to and play with the scenarios, play with the different measures that that encompass the different scenarios and change it according to their taste and to their beliefs. Now, these are the different scenarios we have under consultation. As you can see, the main group of scenarios that we used for our contributions were the high and medium effort scenario, and also the medium effort scenario and the 80-20 scenario, which is a scenario by where applying only 20% of the mitigation measures, we obtain 80% of the reductions. So those three scenarios helped us build the two ranges that we have submitted for comment. The first range goes, and the second range, they both touch on 2025 and 2030. Now we have to see if those two will be, after the consultation phase, maintained, or we will choose one of the dates to communicate our level of effort. This snake shows you a little bit more in detail the process of our INDC consultation phase. I would say it was kick-started in the United Nations General Assembly Summit, Climate Summit. Our president announced there that we will have a consultation phase, and that consulting process would be launched in December 17. Initially, we thought it would run up until the late February, but later we thought that it would probably be advisable to let it run through March, because down here, January and February are the summer months, and of course, we like to relax, and some of us didn't, but then we would have left outside a lot of people that wanted to take part of the consultation. Like you see there, in October of the last year, we had to make sure that legally the process was up and running. And then during October and November, we set up a table. We called it the contribution table, which is an interministerial table. The same folks that were sitting from the ministries in the MAPS project were also sitting at this INDC technical table, where we mainly analyze the different technical options that countries have to present their contributions, namely, for instance, deviation below POW or business as usual line, intensity targets, such as the ones that we ultimately decided upon, but also we talked about the quantified emission limitation and reduction objectives or targets, and of course the different sectorial measures that countries can take part on. And finally, because of the political position of our country and giving consistency to our participation in ILAC and also in the negotiations under the convention, we determined that we wanted a principle of non-backsliding applied to our country, and that meant that we would increase our ambition, but also we would try and make a simpler target, a target that was easier to explain and easier to communicate. Business as usual scenarios proved in Chile to be very useful given the flexibility they have, but to understand what they really entail is very expensive and very difficult. So we thought that we would change that, and we came up with an intensity target that in terms of reporting, for instance, is much simpler and easy because you only have two variables that are given, and those are the emissions inventory and the GDP. So with those two numbers, real numbers, we also from 2007, we are able to project an intensity target in the form of a range. So there we have also the flexibility to be able to communicate this level of effort. Like I said, from December 17 onwards, so right after the COP20 Lima, that provided for us, for instance, the upfront information that should be accompanied with the contributions. We opened initially for comments until 31st of March, but then the civil society and especially the industry asked us to make it a bit longer, so we decided to maintain the consultation phase up until April 15th. A very important part of the consultation phase was to consult with the regions. So we held workshops in the different zones of Chile. I personally had to travel across the country, which was very interesting, a lot of fun, because we were able to talk firsthand with our colleagues in the region, the decentralized government, and understand what their impacts and what their vulnerabilities are in the region, and be able to take that information into account when, for instance, talking about the country's circumstances or vulnerabilities, and of course, what our contribution in terms of adaptation would be. Like I said, in April 15 we closed. Now we're in the very difficult phase of systematizing, understanding, and integrating these comments, valuable comments, more than 250 comments we received, with over 83 different participants, more women than men, for instance, a lot of industry, a lot of study centers, a lot of questions asked with regards to the vulnerability aspects and adaptation, many questions asked in terms of our forest target. So very interesting exercise, a first one for me, and I just wish that it comes to completion in a way that is satisfactory to our ministers, but also very importantly and mainly, I would say, to the population and to the people of Chile. Now, this is a very quick picture of what our INDC is looking like right now. We have a first chapter of national circumstances, and then we jump into mitigation, adaptation, capacity building, technology transfer, and of course, the finance. For mitigation, and that's why it's put to last here, we have two options for the intensity target on one side, which is an economy-wide target, but also we have a specific forest sector or land use sector target, and we give it a different treatment because of the methodological differences and challenges that this specific sector poses. One of them being that the forest or land use sector is not does not respond to GDP in the way that the other sectors of the economy react to. In the national circumstances bit, we try to be very, we try to give an understanding of what the vulnerabilities of the country are, and mainly those are to climate, and a reflection of those are in our natural resources, which is the main source of our economy, but also to the macroeconomic vulnerabilities that the country faces, and of course the high inequalities among the population. In terms of adaptation, one of the concepts that was challenged or that was commented on in the consultation phase is the planned adaptation concept, and this is something that we are now thinking about because there are other approaches to adaptation that not necessarily have to be planned. Others are reactive, for instance, so we're trying to think of how we're going to take that into consideration. Capacity building, of course, at the core. We thought that given that this contribution is not only for Chile, excuse me for a moment. Sorry. The climatic changes in my country have made the summer stay and linger for a long time, and now the cool just kicked in and I'm suffering the consequences. But I was saying that the contribution is, of course, meant to help the global problem, not only consider local. So given the experience that we have built with maps, for instance, and with macroeconomic tools and models, and the methodologies that we have uh, developed for the NAMAs and for the CDMs, we feel that we can share this with others, and this is the capacity building contribution that Chile wants to make. We're trying to nail down the exact language around it, but we would like to be able to share this knowledge with others in a South-South cooperation type of thing. Technology also at the core, conductual changes and paradigm shifts, for instance, in the energy sector are very important. And to do that, we will undertake a technology needs assessment. We're at the moment looking for partners, but we think that by 2018 we should be able to have quite a good understanding of what the technology needs are for the country. The same goes for the finance bit. We don't have a climate finance strategy yet, but we are undertaking assessment of the public expenditure on climate change, and that gives us an idea of what the financial needs and also the financial availability for us to, for instance, consider in the future also making substantive donations to maybe it be direct partners or maybe the Green Climate Fund like we have now. These are the scenarios, but I already explained them to you, so I will not talk about it in detail. I wanted to show you this slide because this is the slide that describes the two options that we have under consultation for the mitigation bit. Option A goes from 30 to 35% reduction of the emissions intensity by 2025, and from 40 to 45% to 2030. So that's quite an increase in our ambition for the period for the option A. Option B is, I would say, an option that entails less effort, and that goes from 25 to 30% in 2025 and 35 to 40 in 2030. Now, I have to remind you that all of these were built with the three highest effort options or scenarios under maps, and all of these, like can be read under here, PIB means GDP. All of them have positive impact, and the most ambitious one have the most positive impact on GDP and on job creation. So that's quite an eloquent indicator when it comes to decision makers. And in fact, our emissions intensity from 1990 to 2010 decreased by 32%. So this tells you about how difficult or feasible this target will be. This is a bit of an explanation of the two targets that we have set up for the forest sector. The first target is a target of 100,000 hectares of reforestation with native species, and with a cost of approximately $250 million. And the second target for the forestry sector of 100,000 hectares of managed native forests, which means that we can actually intervene those forests in order to reach the target. Like I said before, we have dissociated this part of the target of the economy-wide target because it is not directly linked to the GDP, and also because we want to enhance certain attributes of the forest and not only those purely business-oriented, which is normally the case for plantations. This is all that I wanted to talk to you about now. I'm sorry if I extended myself about over time, and I'm happy to answer some of your questions.
Thank you, Andres. And now I would like to thank you for your presentation. I think it has provided a lot of very good information, and also, of course, raised many questions. I would like to read a question from Indra Parmar. He says Chile has got around 107 CDM and around 2021 registered CDM program of activities projects. And I believe as Chile being a coastal country, we've got big challenges to face the grim effect of climate change. My question is how far these GHG mitigation projects operated since 2008 and till date, and have they helped Chile to face climate change, and how much effort or pace of effort is required to face climate change. In whole, he says, where is Chile today as far as GHG mitigation measure? A case that the world can learn from. So I would try to summarize, saying that how those CDM projects have contributed to Chile's efforts, and what is the pace of effort required to face climate change? Is it enough? Go ahead, Andres.
Okay, that's quite a lot of questions in one.
Yeah.
I would say that to tell you on how we're doing on mitigation, well, like I said before, we currently have a business as usual deviation target, a 20% deviation target that has moved us into a very challenging endeavor of implementing and registering NAMAs. I wouldn't say the CDM is having a very crucial role in our mitigation policy at the moment. We all know that the CDM is a bit under the weather, like myself, I would say. So it hasn't been a priority, although Chile has, like has been said, a good record in the participation in this tool. We are the 6th country of the world with most projects and credits traded. But like it was very well said, since 2008 and maybe a bit earlier than that, the market has seen a decrease and definitely hasn't been behaving the way we would like it to be. Although we still have some projects in the pipeline, I wouldn't say at all that it is the main activity or the main financial instrument related to the climate change mitigation in the country as is. However, we do believe that it is a very, very important aspect and tool, the operational tool that we have had under the Convention and the Kyoto Protocol, and we definitely hope to see some sort of flexibility mechanism ingrained in the Paris Protocol or the Paris Agreement for developing countries to be able to access an international market or other flexibility tools related to something like a CDM 2.0, for instance.
Thank you, Andres. We have many questions, and I have a question from Germany, from Sixtus. The question is, how can double accounting of INDCs be avoided, taking into account that some developed countries will be included their international emission reductions through CDM, when the hosting countries are also expected to commit in this regard?
Yeah, I think the short answer to that, I don't know who from Germany is asking the question, but thank you for the question. The short answer for that is a robust MRV system. And that means to understand very well what the emissions inventory is in the country, but also what the accounting frameworks for the emission reduction units is. If we have clarity on what it is and the extent to which those units serve the purpose of verifying the emission reduction target of the developing country, then everything that exceeds that point can be put to the disposition of the international market. But again, it's a very, very big challenge and a challenge that definitely we are trying to tackle appropriately in our country by, for instance, engaging on MRV activities and trying to standardize the monitoring, reporting, and verification tools we have.
Thank you, Andres. There is a one comment from Alejandro Core saying, great presentation, and also from Marcela Bonilla asking if you can share your presentation, and I would like to take advantage of the opportunity to mention that both the presentations and the recording of this webinar will be available in a couple of days on LEDS webpage. So when you close the webinar today, you will get the link where you can get and download the presentations, and also share the recording of the webinar with colleagues you think may be interested. There are other questions. I'm going to read, Andres, two questions for you to answer. One is from Dennis Somwa. He says, did you expect some synergies between some mitigation?
I can barely hear you, Ana Maria. Is it Ana Maria? I hear you very poorly.
Yes. Can you hear me now? Hello, Alejandro. Hello. Andres, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Not very well, but okay.
Okay, but Andres, can you check your speakers? But I'm going to try to speak louder then. From Dennis Somwa, did you expect some synergies between mitigation and adaptation responses? And how was that captured in the INDCs? That's the first question. And then we have another question from Verona Collantes from UN Women. She would like to have a better sense of how gender equality issues and women's empowerment are incorporated in Chile's INDCs, especially given their proactivity on gender equality issues in addressing climate change, as pronounced by President Bachelet herself. In short, how can gender equality considerations be or are mainstream in the different aspects of the INDC? So two questions: how you capture the synergies between mitigation and adaptation in the INDCs, and then how you can incorporate, how can you mainstream gender equality issues in the INDCs. Andres?
I think there is a bad problem of
But Andres,
connection.
I think you can read the questions yourself.
Hello?
Hello, Andres? Can you hear me, Andres?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Andres, can you hear me? Apologies to the audience for the technical problems. I think
Hello?
there is a problem with Andres's.
Ana Maria, Te escucho muy entrecortado. Gracias.
Can the rest of the people tell me if
And
it's my
I'm sending messages through the panel, but I don't seem to reach you. I don't
yes,
know what to do.
Alejandra,
I'm in
can
your
you
hands.
check with Andres, please? Hello, Andres. Thank you to people who I think it's a problem with Andres's audio.
In the panel are telling me they can hear me well, so probably the problem is with you, Ana Maria. I don't know if they can make the questions they want to make through a chat or something. I'm trying to send you.
Yes.
But you haven't replied. So maybe if somebody can send me a question there, I can answer it
Yes,
for you.
I'm going to ask Alejandra to read the questions. Alejandra.
I really have trouble hearing you. So maybe on text. So no, it's not my audio. I think it's you because I'm getting. Okay, I just got a question on the gender issue.
Yes.
And maybe Ana Maria, you can turn off your microphone because I'm getting a lot of interference. So the gender perspective, I would say, is an issue that is of importance to Chile, mainly in the perspective of our negotiation on the ADP. However, you can't see a real difference in the inclusion of the gender perspective as it is now in the contribution. This is quite a challenge to go from a principled approach to the implementation in the contribution is quite a challenge and it's a difficulty. We're thinking of how to make it operative and how we can make it operationalized, and I think it's going to be more of a task to the climate change action plan, because the contribution, as we see it, is more of a vision exercise. I think we're gonna be able to include the principled approach, and that should be a good trigger for us to, when identifying, for instance, measures that will help us with the implementation of the contribution, we will take into consideration not only gender but also human rights and future generations. I will have to leave the workshop soon, so I would like you, I'm addressing the organizers, maybe you can give me one or two more questions.
Yes, Andres, can you hear me now?
Okay, thank you, Alejandra. I'm getting your questions on the chat.
Okay, I think Andres cannot hear us,
who is
so we are sending
now?
the question through the chat.
I'm getting.
We apologize for the technical problems.
Okay, a key question that folks make is the question of synergies, and of course this is a very important question when it comes to countries that have limited resources. We think that adaptation and mitigation are sometimes two sides of the same coin. So we're trying to find out definitely where the synergies are, This is reflected in our contribution, especially in the section of national circumstances. However, we don't link the different and sorry, I lost my focus because I'm getting more and more questions on the chat. We don't link it, make a link direct between the different pillars. What we do is we simply direct our efforts to those measures where we can find those synergies. I don't know if that answers the question. Another question is how central is maps in our INDC? I think, well, I think I already answered that question. A good point around that question is that you need to have political buy-in, and therefore to do that you need to make sure that you have a mandate, and that's what we did. 7 different ministries signed a mandate to commit to this scenario experience, so that's how we were able to maintain and keep it for the 3rd year now. I would like to answer one more question, and then I'm gonna have to say goodbye. The mitigation options and the scenarios that we chose were decided upon by the ministerial table that I mentioned, the INDC table. It was a hard work because, like I told you, we chose the 3 more ambitious scenarios, and these scenarios we ultimately chose because in the government program there is a reference to maintain the level of ambition and maintaining the current commitment, and those are the only 3 scenarios that provide for a trajectory that help us to maintain that level of ambition. Okay, with this I want to say goodbye. I want to thank everyone. I think it is over 150 people out there. I hope you're all doing very good work in asking the difficult questions to your authorities and in providing good information for us as colleagues, so we can compare and aggregate the level of effort towards at least the 2-degree goal. This is a crucial year. This is a year where we can make a change, make a contribution according to our responsibilities and capacities. We don't want to miss this chance, and we want to be part of the study that the Secretariat will come up with in October, so we're doing our best to be ready and to help others doing it. So with this, I want to say goodbye and thank you again to the LEDS LAC and the Global Partnership and the African LEDS. You guys are doing a great job, and we hope to see a lot of good contributions come up during the 1st semester, and of course before October. Thank you.
Thank you, Andres. I hope the rest of the audience can hear me. I would like to ask people to tell me if they can hear me, please. I would like to thank you again. Thank Michelle and Andres for dedicating the time to share their knowledge, their experience with us. Thank everyone who has connected to this webinar. We have people from Norway, Germany, from different parts of Africa, of course, and that is great for us to have this collaboration with the Africa LEDS partnership. We have people from Latin America, so I would just like to say that we hope that we can have more inter-regional collaborations like this, and please contact us at the LEDS LAC Secretariat if there is an opportunity to share information among regions to see how we can organize a new collaboration like this. Thank you to Edward for all the support to organize this webinar. And I would like to say again that the presentations and the recording of the webinar will be available at the LEDS Slack webpage, and that you will get the link where you can download the presentations and access the video later today. So thank you very much for your attendance. Have a great day. Those who are in Latin America, a great evening. And I hope that we can continue to share experiences in the future. Thank you.